Hello and welcome to the Chickadee Knitting Club Knitting Podcast. My name is Caitlin and this is a podcast where I share what I'm knitting, what I'm crafting, and I take you on little glimpses of my life as a school-based occupational therapist. Come on in.
Well, he was like wondering where you were.
Oh, he was wondering where I was?
Okay, yeah.
Sim, you want to come? So now that Sim's here to join us, I think it's appropriate to mention this year, we discovered his new favorite park. So basically, it's just a patch of land that is set aside to be reclaimed as a part of the prairie. And specifically an oak savanna is the type of ecosystem. It wasn't until this year that I took Simka along to check it out. And he loves it so much that the first time that I took him around, we didn't even make the full half-mile loop because he was so busy sniffing all the things that we only were able to go around one corner, and then we had to turn back around and head back to the CAR. And even then, I had to, was kind of coaxing him and trying to get him to, come back so that we could go home, and even told him his favorite word, asked if he wanted to go on a CARRIDE. He was not interested. And I've never seen him like that before. And so it kind of became a part of our routine where after work, I would, pick him up. We'd drive just outside my neighborhood to this park, and then we'd go on the loop. And he is just such a happy pup when he's out there. Even when we're in the CAR about to park and I'm trying to clip his leash onto him, or even like squeeze him into his little jacket on really cold days, and he'll just be like twirling donuts in my lap. He'll be making these like baby bird noises. That means that he's really excited, and he just wants to go, he just wants to get out, and that's been really fun to discover something that he loves that much. And now I want to talk about the things that I knit, the things that I have been knitting, and kind of what I look forward to knitting-wise into the next year. The only finished objects I really can think of, at least like significant finished objects, are the 2 baby sweaters that I knit for my coworkers. Thankfully, they fit perfectly on the babies that they were intended for, and I'm very glad that they're helping keep these little ones all snugly and warm. But I almost really feel like those were the only knitting finished objects for the entire year. Mostly because I've this year worked on a lot of very long, big, time-consuming projects that I still am continuing to work on. So I'm going to show you those. The first one from this year was the Current Mood Shawl by Graffiti Knits. This is about as far as I'm at. I'm between 1/3 and 1/2 of the way through this shawl. It's gonna be a very long shawl. It's very plushy and cushy because it has 2 colored brioche, which is just a plushy, cushy kind of stitch. But I took a pause on it when I started running out of one of these colors of yarn. The pattern calls for 3, and so I was I was kind of debating whether or not to either, find like the same yarn or a similar yarn, or just find something completely different and just add to the variety that's here. If you can see closely, the white, which is from Big Little Yarn Co.'s Merry-Go-Round of Life yarn from their Studio Ghibli collection. It's got a bunch of different shades of blue and yellow, some greens and purples that I could also pull from, but I guess I just never made that decision. And so for next year, my hope is that I might hold it off getting new yarn for it until the upcoming yarn shop hop, which is where I kind of get do my massive yarn haul for each year, and bring this along and just kind of see, what is there, what's available, and kind of what feels right for this particular project. I almost wanted to consider this a finished object because it was quite an accomplishment, But I finished the back panel of the Handsome Chris pullover that I'm knitting my brother. He's very tall, and so it's taken a very long time just to knit this up. But is this a fun one to work on? Just look at all those different cable patterns with this light, very creamy shade of yarn. So like I said, this is the back panel. I just cast off for the front panel, and I'm really hoping that I can have it done by next year's Christmas. This part only took, between like May and November. So this did take 6 months. So I might have the front panel done hopefully before June, and then if I spend like 3 months each on a sleeve, then it should be done by next Christmas. If I had sat and just done this project all the way through, I probably would have a lot more done by now, but there's only so many cable stitches that you can do over and over and over again before you just need a little bit of variety. And part of that I found through knitting the J Sweater by Rachel Brockman. It's a top-down, color-changing yoke kind of sweater, and it's meant to sort of allude to blue jay feathers in the kind of design that's here. I'm almost done with the shoulders. I still have a little more to knit down to before I can break off to the sleeves. And seeing it like this makes me really excited to finish it, but I've also been really hesitant about whether I even want this sweater, because this is for me and I've been knitting it, but almost out of like a sense of duty to it because I've been knitting it for so long. I know, because it's in stockinette, I'm not a stockinette sweater kind of gal. I like my sweaters to have, some texture and interest, and while the color work pattern definitely brings that interest, I don't know, like seeing it makes me really excited for it to be finished, but I don't know, again, I'm hesitant. I'm kind of torn about this. So I'll just keep knitting until my yarn runs out, I guess, because there's other sweaters that I want in it. And so this is kind of where my plans for knitting plans for 2023, this is kind of what I have in mind. And a lot of these are kind of hinged around this upcoming yarn shop hop, because I have some yarns, but not a sweater quantity for those, but I want to make some sweaters. I really feel like that is an area that is kind of lacking in my wardrobe, is some good sweaters that I can wear on a daily basis that really feel authentic to, how I like to express myself. The first yarn that I would love to make a sweater out of is, it's called Scout. It's like their DK version from Kelborn Woolens. This is the color Meadow Heather. Like I said, it's a DK weight, and it is this, heathered green. It's coming across right now as it's a kind of bluish teal, but it's more of it's definitely green with some teal undertones, and actually some more yellowish greens in there too. It's a very nice combination. Again, this is what I'm talking about, where I like my sweaters to have some variety, some interest, some texture. Whereas the J sweater that I'm knitting, the colors are just flat. It's just the one color of yarn. This is like, there's something going on to it. So I don't have really any ideas for sweaters that I could do this with. There are a few on my Ravelry queue that could be a possibility for this, or it could be a possibility for some of this other yarn that I have. These are 3 skeins that come, that are all from, I Isager, I don't know what that, I had never encountered that yarn company dyer before, but these are all in the weight alpaca too. So I think this is it might be sock weight, I think, but these are all in a variety of different colors. There's this darker purple, this lighter lavender purple, and this like seafoam green that I adore. And so I would love to have something made of like just with this, or have this be a contrast color to something. It does kind of coordinate with the Scout yarn, so that could be an interesting pair to put together. Even though they are different weights, I could, figure it out. But this is one that I would just love a either like cables or like moss stitch. This is the one that I'm talking about, is the lavender, like heathered lavender yarn. And it kind of does go with the darker purple as well, so there could be some color comboing going on. But I got these at a store that's kind of the last stop for my knitting club and I when we go on the yarn shop hop. And I always forget about it each year, and by the time I get there, I've already either spent all my money, gotten tired of buying yarn, and I just want to, just get my stamp on the yarn shop hop thing and keep moving on. And so I always like forget that this one shop, it's called the Yarnery. It is like my preference in yarn to a T, and so I'm going to keep that in mind, and hopefully they have more of this so that I can get a sweater quantity. So upcoming yarn shop hop, I'm going to be having a list of like, this is what I want to get. I want to get something for the graffiti knits. I forgot what the sweater's called. The shawl. I can't think of it right now, even though I just said the name. As well as to get some things to, knit some sweaters for that upcoming winter. But I also do have in mind a like sweater vest with, and this is something I've mentioned before, I would also like to knit a sweater vest with this Jagger spun yarn in their weight, or in their type of yarn, their blend, their whatever that's called, Presque which I've already mentioned is very meaningful to me. This is very reminiscent of when I lived and studied in Maine, and so to have something to commemorate that is something I've had on my mind ever since I bought this yarn. And I'm thinking about this particular Hobbit sweater pattern. It is very textured, very adorable. It's got some pockets that I think would look really good as this. The color is called Powder Blue. It is a very like true sky blue, light blue, but it's a children's sweater, so I would have to somehow reverse engineer it to be an adult sized sweater. There was also one other option that I was thinking of, but I'm trying to keep all these different patterns and stuff straight in my head, so it's not coming to me right now. But this is another option that I was thinking of for this sweater vest. Yeah. Words are kind of failing me at this point, so I'm going to take a quick break before I start on the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is this year I have gotten really into sewing, and so I want to show you what I've been sewing this year and what I plan to sew this upcoming year. So, sewing. This is not something that is like a new discovery for me, mostly because the past few years I've been trying to get back into sewing. Maybe not even get back into is the right word. I did take like one quilting class in 8th grade, and so I know how to work a sewing machine, but hey pup, yeah, let's get you a blanket so you can perch. This is not actually a blanket, it's some fabric that I used in a project this year. How you feel about that? He needs a haircut. He's getting a little floofy. But so I have been sewing, or it's a skill that's been in my repertoire for a long time, but it's very underutilized, or has been for the majority of my life. And so the past few years I've been trying to like reacclimate myself to a sewing machine, to learn different techniques and slowly build up my skill set, just because I had been wanting to be able to sew my own clothes. Mostly because as I've been discovering what I like to wear, I found it pretty difficult to find the clothes that I have in mind, either, at a store or secondhand. And so the next option for me, or the next step, would be just to make what I want to wear. And I've been knitting these kind of square, like hankies, napkins, for like a handful of years now. But these are two that I most recently have made. Just because I've mentioned this with yarn before, I love me a good color combo, and if I'm not shopping for yarn with a particular project in mind, I will shop and just find color combos that speak to me, and so I do the same with fabric shopping. And so this, it's just a square with an X kind of stitched into the middle to keep the two sides from pulling apart. But this one is a yellow background with some white winter critters like an owl, some rabbits, an Arctic fox, and polar bears. And they're very cartoony with some winter headgear on, some nice hats with white pom-poms on top. Blue hats particularly, because on the back is that same shade of blue with some white, and it's in a large like plaid pattern. Gingham maybe would be a better way to describe it. But that's one that I've knit, as well as this simple seafoam green with pine cones and pine branches in a darker green on top. And then on the back is that same shade of dark green, but with some stars in white on the back. So that's something that I've sewn. I've also finished making some children's dresses for a few of the young children in my life. They were supposed to be like an Easter present for Easter 2023, but they're going to have to be for Easter 2024. And that's actually perfect, because I sewed these, I did not finish them before Easter, and they also were several sizes larger than their actual size. So this works. They'll actually be able to fit them, hopefully, this upcoming Easter. Both of these are very wrinkled, definitely need an ironing, but they are gathered with an elastic around the neck. There's a little bit of gathering for a skirt, as well as at the sleeves, and there's kind of a puff with them with the way that they're shaped. But it's more or less just kind of a smock dress that was very easy to whip up. This one, which is in a larger size for an older sister, is in this mustard plaid, and it's made out of like a nursery flannel cotton, so it's very soft, very comfortable. And sort of to coordinate with that is for the little sister, same exact smock dress, same kind of fabric, but this one is white with yellow ducks on top. Their beaks are the same mustard as the other dress, and there's also some blue and purple raindrops all around. So this was kind of, my idea was April showers kind of dress that I had in mind. That's what I knit. It took much longer than I had anticipated, because I haven't sewn garments before, and I wasn't anticipating how long it takes not to make it, but to measure and cut the fabric and then put it together and realize that you've sewn it together wrong, and all of that that I was hoping to get all those kinks out of the way, make all those mistakes so I could learn for next time with that project, for the purpose of sewing myself my Halloween costume, which was a quote-unquote historically accurate Astrid from How to Train Your Dragon. I had this all planned out with a design that reflected through the basic sort of costume of a Viking Age woman, the different motifs and colors that are in the movies. But when I went to get the fabric, the selection was abysmal. At least when you're trying to find something that resembles linen and something that resembles wool. And I had to make do with the best of that. But I did it. It was so much work, and I had to sew and resew the sleeves at least 4 different times. And unlike these children dresses, I finished it before Halloween. So I was actually able to wear it on Halloween to a event at the museum that I volunteer at, and it was snowing and it was perfect. And just that simple shift, which was the underdress, and that simple apron that went over it, I almost never want to sew another garment again. It was awful. And I made so many mistakes, and I realized that I will probably always be making mistakes because that's just the nature of sewing clothes, especially when you don't have a pattern. I've never sewn with an actual sewing pattern before, so maybe that's got to be my next thing. That'll be my plan for 2024, sew something from a pattern. And actually, now that I think about it, I do have some patterns that I've gotten from thrift stores. I have 3 different dress patterns. This one is the simplest. It's just it's just a spaghetti strap dress. I can't imagine it's very complicated. And it specifically is a 1 hour sewing project, which will mean that it'll take me a month to make. But if I decide to try sewing garments again, this might be my avenue. So there is a good chance that this is going to become a combined knitting and sewing podcast, and I'm excited for that. Thank you for watching this video. This is going on like an hour and 15 minutes of me filming this, so hopefully it doesn't end up being too massive by the time I'm done editing it, but I am very grateful for everyone who has taken the time to watch me share the things that I enjoy doing crafting wise, and I hope that you've had a wonderful year this year. It has been a very difficult year for many people around the world, but as a friend of mine always likes to say, if you want to change the world, start by getting to know your neighbors and being kind to them. So go forth and make the world a better place for the people around you. Take care and Happy New Year.